Hello, everyone. Welcome to Avaya University and our Overcoming Chronic Pain curriculum. I am Andy Anderson. My partner, Ike Allen, and I are co-mentors and the co-owners of Avaya. Thank you so much for being here. In this next class, we are talking with fellow teacher Brandy Gillmore. Brandy has her PhD in natural medicine and is a world-renowned speaker who is most well-known for her discoveries in self-healing. Brandy is going to be talking with us about how to get rapid relief from chronic pain. Some of the key things you're going to learn about are her journey. She had a very bad injury and a bad accident that led her into a very long period of time with chronic pain. And she talks about her healing journey and actually ultimately going back to the mind, something that she never thought that would be the solution to her problems, but she dove into the power of the mind and was able to have this amazing healing journey. So we talk about all sorts of things. We talk about emotions and stress and thoughts and all of those things and how they affect the body. And she talks about strategies to help you overcome your chronic pain, places to get started, and ultimately starting with the positive. She stresses that, right? Starting with the positive in your life. There are so many different kinds of studies that show that things like positive thinking leads to things like more happiness in your life, decreased anxiety and depression, more confidence in your life, more empowerment, and also massive positive benefits on your physical health. So positivity obviously positively affects your health because it affects how you feel. It's not just how you think, right? But how you feel as a result of thinking those positive thoughts and then actually really dropping into the feeling of being positive, being grateful, being joyous, all those kinds of things. So we talk about all sorts of things like that. Also, she talks about what to do when you're stuck, right? When you feel like you're stuck and you feel like you've been doing this journey for so long and you're not sure where to go from here. She talks about this is a really common thing for so many people with chronic pain dealing with this problem of being stuck because we're just not used to changing ourselves. And it's not just necessarily changing little habits like little things, maybe tidying up more in our house or something like that, but right, changing ourselves when it comes to our thoughts, changing ourselves when it comes to how we feel, all of those kinds of things, our emotions, any number of things. So changing ourselves is not necessarily the easiest thing in the world, which often leads to feelings like feeling stuck and not sure where to get going on your journey. So she's going to answer all those questions for you. And now our class with our fellow teacher, Brandy Gillmore. Thank you so much for being here with us, Brandy.
Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure is mine. I'm so excited to dive into this. I know you have quite an incredible story of self-healing to share, and I know that people are going to get a lot out of it. So I guess, why don't we just get started with how did you personally get into healing with the mind?
You know, to be honest with you, it is the last thing that I think that I would ever thought I was doing. I like astronaut, I would have thought maybe even first before healing with the mind. I went through a radical injury. And at the time I had been doing network engineering operations. And so just very analytical and also very physical, like in physical shape and into sports and different things like that. And basically I got in an accident and I had two. I had both a car accident and a fall. And I literally went from living this full life of working and traveling and owning my own house and doing all of these things to like being in bed and being on morphine every day for almost 7 years. And, on a good day, I could get out with my wheelchair or get around short distances with a walker or cane. And on a bad day, I didn't make it out of bed, and that was my life. And it was crazy. So, right after it's happened, of course, my doctors were like, don't move. Let's try to figure out everything. And I got a whole long list of diagnoses from CRPS, complex regional pain syndrome, to nerve lesions and all kinds of things. And so, I went from like one doctor after another, just trying to get better. And every doctor kept saying, there was the same words. It was just like, I'm sorry, Miss Gillmore, there's nothing we can do for you. And it was just, I just never thought that I would be in that position. And of course, they did things like injections and nerve ablations and infusions and all these things, but it was like my whole life went upside down.
So how did you, when you kept getting those words, right? There's nothing we can do for you. What did you do to be what you are today, able healed and talking about it?
You know, the last thing I would like, the mind was, of course, the last thing I would ever go to. I was like, okay, diet. So like, it just, I mean, I ate every possible diet that I could possibly, from candida diets to vegan to vegetarian to everything. I was going to heal, you know, and it just, then what happened is like, I started, I mean, so many different things happened because I was trying everything that I could find in reflexology and Reiki and energy. I mean, I was just, all right, let me expand and do everything. It doesn't matter. Like, I really didn't care where the answers came from. I just wanted to get better. And so eventually I started looking at like research in Israel and Mexico and looking at medical journals, seeing what was new, because I started reading that, you know, that more and more people are getting sick. And not only that, but I found another study that showed, or statistic that showed that more and more people were getting chronic illness, more and more people in chronic pain. And it was like 1.5 billion people live in chronic pain. And I thought, oh God, like if I want to get better, that means one very simple thing, that I have to do something different than 1.5 billion people are doing. And because if they're living their life in pain and I mean, it was like, if they're not getting it, I'm on morphine and all this stuff and every day, like, how am I ever going to get better? And it's the reality. And so, you know, the more I saw that, I felt bad for their situation. And I thought, like, this is hopeless. I have to find something different. And so I was just hoping that something new would be discovered, you know. So I'm looking at medical journals and research in this country and that country. And the hospital that I've been going to, because I'd go there and I'd have a whole team of doctors that would help and help me to try to figure something out and, you know, make suggestions and different things like that. And they called me and they said that I could be part of this study for a brand new procedure. And I thought, oh my God, like this is everything. And I was just in tears. I was so happy. And I was like, literally like counting down the days to the study. And on the day of the study, like I remember even carrying what I wore. I felt like I was going to the hospital to get my life back and going to feel better. Like it was that moment. So they, you know, get me in my wheelchair and get me to the hospital. And as soon as I got there, the nurse, she starts like prepping me for this procedure, doing all these things. And I'm laying there literally thinking about what it's going to be to get my life back. You know, what I'm going to do, all the things I want to go, like even remembering what it would be like to be out of pain. And the doctor, he came in and he looked at me and he looked at his chart and he looked at me and I could see that something just wasn't right. And he was like, you know, Miss Gillmore, you can't be a part of this study. We don't expect that you're actually going to get better. And in that moment, I mean, it was like, everything just crashed. I was a mess. And I don't remember getting home that day. I don't remember what happened the next few days, but the next memory I have is I'm laying there in bed. I'm still in so much pain and I don't even want to open my eyes. And it's just like, what's the point? Like I knew that I couldn't live my life like that. And I wasn't just, I mean, breathing hurt, movement of my body, everything hurt. And it was so much pain. And it was just like, that wasn't the life I ever saw myself living. And I couldn't, it was hard. And so I was just laying there thinking, you know, what's the point? And then at that very moment, like a voice or a thought in my head was like, but what about the placebo? And in that moment, like leading up to the study, I kept thinking, you know, please don't get the placebo. Please don't get the placebo. I want the real treatment. Right. And so in that moment, I thought, well, what about the placebo? And it was like, it's a known fact that a certain percentage of people can get better from the placebo. And I was like, well, wait a second. I can't give up. If there's a possibility that something in my mind could work to heal me, and I can't give up. Like there's still hope. There's a possibility. And so in that moment, I was like, oh my God. So I started like meditating and visualizing and listening to binaural beats and bringing in energy and doing all these things and everything I could think of and getting super spiritual. And it didn't work. And I was doing that for a lot. Like even like a lot of people said that the placebo works because you believe it will work. which we know is not true. But at the time I thought that. But even if we look at the open label placebo, where the doctor and the patient both know it's a placebo, and that still works, has been shown to have results. So we know it's not just belief. But anyway, at the time, like, I was convincing myself I was already healed. I was doing all these things. It didn't work. I did it for like years. My whole house sounded like an ashram. And then I was like, well, like anything, if I'm going to program a computer, I can't just throw a bunch of programming at it and hope it's going to like somehow work. Or I can't just like get in a car and not know what I'm doing and push buttons, or a plane and I wouldn't get in there and push a bunch of buttons and expect that the flight was going to go great. Like, that would be a bad plan. And so, like, the brain's a little complex.
Right.
Just a little. And so, but that's when I thought, okay, look, we know that the brain is so complex. And I remember, hearing quotes from neuroscience over and over say, we would know very little about the brain. And because I had done network engineering before, my whole job was troubleshooting every day. And I thought, okay, well, I'm going to troubleshoot it. I'm going to figure it out. And started looking at a lot of things and realizing it just didn't make sense. I mean, like, one thing I found as I started researching, going, okay, I'm going to figure it out. People with multiple personality disorder can have different pain, different ailments, different asthma when they're in different personalities. And I thought, well, wait a second, that makes no sense. And so there was just a lot of things that really led to understanding the mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you were just talking, I was reminded of Dr. Joe Dispenza's story. I'm assuming you probably know his story, or no, like, in the world of self-healing. I was just thinking about his story. So.
I've had lunch with him before, and we've like, I don't know as much about his story.
Yeah, well, no, you just reminded me of that based on bringing it down to, right, ultimately the mind and the power of you in order to, right, to create the healing. So, like, was there, and like, when did you start experiencing relief? Like, what was?
That's the thing. Like, so, and I see this all the time. Like, I'm not like, when I was, trying everything and meditating and doing all these things and binaural beats and all this stuff, it didn't work. And I see that with a lot of people all the time. And so when I started looking at going, okay, let me just look very simply. How is it even possible for the mind to affect the physical body? And, looking on a very, very, very simple note, if somebody's embarrassed, their face turns red. Mm-hmm. Or even somebody can have an anxiety attack, racing heart, shortness of breath. Okay. Or sexual thought obviously affects the physical body, different for men and women, but there's a physical thing. And I'm like, okay, well, that's just emotions. But if you look at it and I go, okay, well, yeah, we know that. How much can emotions really affect the physical body? Well, there's things like the widowhood effect. When a senior loses a spouse, they unfortunately have a much higher rate of death, or even an infant. So it's beyond just thinking, because if an infant doesn't get enough love, they can actually die. Right. And so we can look at that. And then I started looking at other things like bored to death, scared to death. And I thought, well, if we can freaking die of boredom, okay, and we can look at these 7 emotions and see like they affect the body, or the broken heart syndrome, or different things like that. I thought, well, what about anger? What about rage? What about resentment? What about loneliness? Speaking of, new studies have now recently shown like loneliness connected to type 2 diabetes. And so, or there's different studies that are starting to come out, like even Harvard released a study as far as what do they call it? Emotional vitality. It was shown that emotional vitality is able to reduce coronary heart disease by over 50%. Right. Now, why is that big? Well, heart disease is the #1 cause of death worldwide. And when you look at that and you go, wait a second, emotional vitality, happiness. Okay. You start to see basically that our emotions affect our physical body. And of course, the skeptic in me going, wait a second, I had a car accident, I had a fall. It can't possibly be something in my mind. And then when you start to look at it, and like, I started, really looking at the body, because if we look at the body, we go, okay, well, there's the physical body, and then there's cells, and then we look at it and there's atoms. And you start to realize for a moment, like, the body's constantly repairing and replacing cells and repairing and replacing, our body. Like, even, have you heard before, we have basically a new skeleton every 10 years?
Yes. Yeah.
And I thought, well, wait a second. And then how is it possible for somebody to have that old football injury from high school that was 20 or 30 or more years ago?
Right.
And I thought, wait a second. And of course, it goes back to the awareness that the blueprint for the body is in the mind. And so that really had me, just looking at the mind. And so what I started doing is looking at what are the key things in the mind that really affect that change. Because I could also look at it very objectively, being somebody who's troubleshooting and all of that. I could see that emotions affect the body. That we know. I've never seen a study that didn't show that stress affects the body. So we know that. And then I could also see that there were plenty of people who were stressed who weren't necessarily sick. Because if stress just affected the body, then that would mean that anybody who was like in the military or a cop, they'd be sick all of the time.
Right.
And then somebody who was retired or, relaxing all the time, they'd be healthy. It'd be easy to see. And so it was really about understanding that there were key things that were coming together in the mind to affect the physical body. And that, in other words, the easiest way to put it is to say that, to illustrate that is to say, maybe if somebody wants to make cake, that, if they have flour, they can't make cake. But if they have flour and they mix it with a few other ingredients, then they can make cake. And the same thing is true with the mind, is that we can see that emotions affect the body. If, scared to death, bored to death, embarrassment, anxiety, we can see that emotions affect the body, but they don't always affect the body. What is the difference? Well, there's a recipe to it. And so basically that's what I did, is I started looking at how things come together in the mind and then creating that radical shift. And so that to me is why you can see some people who might have some relief. Like, I could use meditation or I could use relaxation and I could start to get my pain to go down, and then it would just come back. So nothing was really health changing. Nothing was life changing. Nothing healed my body. But relaxation and visualization, all that could be beneficial, but it took more. It took really pinpointing specific things in the mind and then creating change. And that's what I do today to help others get radical results, is to pinpoint specific things in the mind and help them create that change.
So since you just mentioned that, how, like, for people watching right now, how could they get started? And people are coming from all sorts of backgrounds, right? Accidents, injuries like you had that have led to chronic pain, and or things like autoimmune disease or any number of things, inflammatory diseases, that kind of stuff. So what do they start pinpointing? How do they start paying attention to this and connecting the dots?
I love that you just said everybody's from different backgrounds. So true. And so many different things. And I would say a few things. Not only is everybody from like different backgrounds as far as injuries and illnesses, but also what's exciting is that also different mindsets. As we talk about stress affects the body. Metaphysics also says, our mind can heal our body, or even the Bible, like going back to Proverbs, talks about a merry heart is a medicine to the body. Ill thoughts will draw the bones. And it's just, so it's starting to implement it. And a lot of times what I have people do is I always recommend that people start with the positive and start to bring that in. And the reason for that is because if you think about somebody who's got stress going on that's affecting their body, and they go, okay, well, I'm going to look directly at this stress. How does that usually go? Is going to typically increase, because it's like if I said, don't think about the color green, or don't think about the house that's next door. What's the first thing you're going to do? Put your mind on the house next door. So if it's like, if there's a feeling of criticism and whatnot that's affecting their body, and I said, okay, well, let's not think about criticism right now. And they're like, oh, so then it fills their mind. So the thing that I love to do is have people start with the positive, because it's something that we're overlooking in our culture. And a lot of people would go like, oh, the positive, because everybody wants to go to the negative, and okay, what's the negative, and go straight to that. But the thing is a few things. First and foremost, if you look at results from positivity, even like seniors with pets live longer. Men who are married have a tendency to live longer. emotional vitality. So we talked about that with heart disease. Positivity positively affects your health. And so that, and I also like to have people start to get in a vision for a better life, because when you feel optimistic, it's going to add in more positivity also. And so there are several things that we can do, but I like to have people start with the positive before they go into the negative, because I don't want to have them increase their pain. And I can tell you that there are people who might go straight into the negative, and they will increase their pain, and then it's going the wrong direction instead of the right direction. And so I always want to have people start with positive, really bringing in the positive and feeling it.
Yes. What are we focusing our attention on, right?
Yeah. And one way I have people do that is because a lot of times focusing our attention feels so effortful. It feels, if you think about it for a moment, a lot of people would say our thoughts affect our life, but it really has to do with our emotions. And one way to illustrate that would be to think about, if somebody's frustrated, if you've been frustrated before, you're frustrated, and it's like one freaking thing after another, you just everything's frustrating. Like you wake up and you're off, and this happens and that happens, and you spill your tea or your coffee or your water, you trip over the dog, even if you don't have one, you're headed somewhere, and you're like one red light after another. But it's not that you pictured all these things happening. It's just that emotion is emanating. And so one way that I like to have people do it is I like to have them pick a song that feels uplifting, and to start bringing in that feeling. So like one that I did during my injury was one by U2. It's a Beautiful Day. And I have to say, I did not feel like it was a beautiful day, but I felt like I was in a lot of pain and my whole life was falling apart. But I used that to start bringing in a different feeling, or even like walking on sunshine. I felt more like I was walking with razor blades. But I started using the different songs to bring in positive feelings to really create that change.
Got it. Yeah, it's an interesting distinction, right? Like thoughts versus, not that it's necessarily versus, but or thoughts and feelings, right? Like how are you feeling, and how do you want to feel, and bringing in, yes, that essence into your life. And the more you feel those positive feelings, right, how that can affect your physical well-being.
Totally. Also, all too often you'll see people going, yeah, that happened, but I'm just going to think positive.
Are you sure?
Yeah. I'm just going to think, but I went through this, but I'm just going to think positive. And it's like, yeah, I'm just going to be optimistic. Things will work out. And they're not really feeling it, but it's kind of like this, is that if you've ever been in love before, where you're in love and you just can't stop thinking about the person, like your mind just goes there and goes there, even like you're trying to focus or do other things, and it's a beautiful thing. Or if you've ever felt really frustrated and mad at somebody or something like that, you've just got an argument or something like that, and you're trying to do something else, and you notice your mind keeps going back to the argument. You find yourself continuing the argument in your head, and it's because how we're feeling. Like if you're feeling happy, then it's easy to just have more thoughts that are coming in that are happy. If you're feeling angry, like you can walk down the street and you notice the one thing that's off and this and that. So those emotions are just, they set the tone for our mental atmosphere.
So is this the same thing as energy to you? I know in your work you talk about like people shifting their energy. Is that the same thing when you're talking about feelings?
Absolutely.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
Absolutely. It's just our thoughts emanate energy. And so if you look at emotion, it's energy in motion. And, even everything is energy, and it's powerful. And so I think that's one thing that, when you start to think about emotions for a moment, one thing that kept coming up during my injury when I was trying to figure all this out was a quote by Einstein that's, you cannot solve a problem from the same level of consciousness that created it. And as a culture, we look at emotions and we're like, yeah, I know, emotions, stress, blah, 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 but what else? And I mean, if you see, like, I don't know if you saw like videos and stuff on my website, but you'll see like a woman who had a tumor in her throat that you could see. It was protruding. And we did an hour and 15-minute session and her tumor disappeared. So she showed up for surgery the next day. Mm-hmm. And the ENT was like, I've never seen anything like this in 30 years. Because they had just taken an MRI the day before. Mm-hmm. And it was 5 millimeters. They measured it, all these things. Or maybe it was 2 days before, but recently. And then for her to see it protruding and then it was just gone. He's like, and so that, and I mean, and from using the mind. And so people are always amazed that you can actually get physical results.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So what about, you've mentioned obviously your healing journey wasn't something that happened overnight. And I'm sure a lot of people watching right now can relate to being stuck or feeling stuck in their chronic pain and like there's no answer. Do you what is your thought on why people experience getting stuck?
Why people experience getting stuck? I would say that we're not used to changing ourselves. And a lot of patterned ways of thinking, like people don't typically know how to change their thinking genuinely. And when you really change the way you feel and the way you think at a deeper level, that is the change that's needed. And people don't know how to pinpoint what specifically to change. So even if that, like, even for example, I mean, I was meditating for years. I was listening to all the music. I was doing all the things. I was visualizing. I was doing all of that and picturing myself running on the beach and all of these things, which I think are all great. Don't get me wrong. But it doesn't, it really takes addressing the specific emotion. And so I would say that, I would say addressing and really changing. And I would say that a lot of people, I would say, honestly, people are terrible with the mind. And to my point, suicide is a leading cause of death. Depression is is just increasing. Mm-hmm. And if you think about it, people like Robin Williams, who battled depression and alcoholism for years, 20, 30, I don't even know how long, but years. So even somebody who has access to everything, okay, wasn't getting the results that he needed to change himself. And so, or, if you look at Anthony Bourdain, and so you can look at and you can see that it really takes understanding and doing something different with the mind. And so I would say a lot of the reason that people are stuck is because the things that we traditionally teach with the mind aren't great. Like, even notice, like I said, starting with the positive. And if you think about a traditional route, if somebody's experiencing depression, what do? They go and they talk about the problem. They talk about the problem with their friends, or maybe they might hold it inside, but then they go to therapy and then they talk about the problem and they talk about the problem. And then maybe they go try to do something that they enjoy. Well, if you think about it for a moment, let's say you pick your favorite place in the world. Let's say maybe it's like you always wanted to go to Fiji or Hawaii or somewhere, but you go there and let's say you feel like you have a ton of guilt and you're walking around Fiji or Hawaii. How great is it?
Not great.
It's not great. So then we have people talk about the problems and then we say, go do something fun. Now they're trying to do something that they would normally enjoy and they still don't enjoy it. And then they feel like more and more like something's wrong with them. Like, I'm even doing my funnest things in the world and it doesn't feel fun. Well, yeah, of course it's not. You feel terrible inside. You could be in the best place in the world. And so then it kind of makes it worse because then it reinforces to people that even if I do the things that I enjoy, I'm still not going to enjoy them. What fun is life? Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, because you didn't make that change on the inside, nothing is fun from that place. And so again, if, even if we look at people who, like Robin Williams, who had unlimited resources, we're looking at the mind in a way that's not helpful. And if you look at it where it's getting worse and not better, like the suicide is even the second leading cause of death among people who are 10 to 35, 10 to 34. I mean, crazy.
Right.
And even, and, you know, I think so a lot of the things that we're teaching aren't as effective as they need to be, even, you know, even on healing. I mean, if we look at, you know, I like to look at references and go, okay, well, how do we do differently? So even if we look at Steve Jobs, you know, he was somebody who was known for meditating, or Wayne Dyer, you know,
Right.
meditated a lot. And it's like, we need to do more. We need to do more. We need to do different. We need to understand our minds, and we each need to understand our own minds. You know, a lot of times people will say, I just want somebody to fix me. Well, absolutely. But you need to understand your mind. You need to understand how to use it. And that's the fun thing, is that when we make changes to our mind, it's life-changing, you know?
I absolutely.
This is how I look at it, is basically like our mind, our body is telling us the most important thing we need to know. So in other words, let's say somebody has that pain in their shoulder, or their pain in their knee, or the autoimmune issue, or whatever it is, but they have whatever issue. And because our thoughts help create our lives, it's like something is off with their body because it's that thought or emotion going on, and it's also off with their life. And so it's kind of like the best way to describe it is let's say we're going through life, and we're driving through life and it's like we're driving, and it's like the road is really bumpy and life is really, there's a lot of bumps in life, and it's like GPS is like telling us, hey, left turn, and we're like, you know, going, and we're like, and GPS is like left turn, we're like, shut up, GPS. And so it's like our body is giving us a message to change. It's saying, hey, let go of that hurt, or let go of that resentment, or let go of that criticism, because it's attracting more and more of the same, that hurt, or that fear, or that failure, or that sadness, or that whatever it is, it's attracting more and more of the same in our lives. And instead we're saying, you know, the shoulder, the whatever issue, we're saying, can I just like chop it off, or get a pill or something, or, you know, shut up, body. But when we listen to it, and we understand what emotional pattern is going on, maybe it's hurt, maybe it's abandonment, maybe it's fear, maybe it's anger, whatever it is, and we really address it, and we really make that change, it doesn't just change our health, it changes our lives. And so to me, even going through my entire injury, I wouldn't take it back if I could, because of the way it changed my life. It made me have to change things that I didn't even like. I was just like, subconscious what? I mean, I didn't have a sense of awareness for my subconscious mind, but it really made me have to find things that were in my subconscious mind and change. And when I did, it changed my entire life. And I thought, wait, but I had a car accident, I had a fall. Wait a sec. And I had physical injuries. Like, what? You know, but life-changing.
Well, and now look at what you do, right? Like, as a result of all of that. I love it. So we're running a little low on time, and I want to make sure that you get to talk about a couple of things. So everyone watching right now, there are a few buttons below us in this video underneath us. So there's a button for a free gift you have for everybody, as well as a couple of different programs you have. So could you share a little bit about those?
Absolutely. So the free gift has to do with getting stuck. So it's the 3 places that people really get stuck. And it walks you through that. So that's the free gift, and people can just, you can opt into that, and just sign up for that. And so it's like a mini video series, which is cool. Also, I normally teach, you know, and have a video set showing you how to really look at what is in your subconscious mind. So helping you find the specific emotion, how to change it. And so that's what I really teach. And that's what my healing program is really about how to change your mind, how to identify the specific emotion, what specifically do you need to change, and get that in. How do you get more positive in? How do you understand your mind? And so that's what that is. And then, because it's New Year's, and we're in the new year, and I also right now have a live class going on that's actually starting like this coming week. And so it's a live class, and it's a small intimate class. And so what I do is I help people to identify the specific things that are going on and we touch on all of the main topics as far as happiness itself, but also money, relationship, finances, success, business, and really looking at that. So we'll spend a week, it's a 4-week class, and we spend a week covering those main topics. And so not only do we do blocks that are for health, but also stress regarding finances, or, changing mindset and really identifying, okay, what needs to change and how do I change it? And so that's what's going on. It's 2020.
That's awesome.
It's 2020, game on. It's time to be happy and healthy.
I love it. Well, thank you for that. And I love that it's like a holistic kind of viewpoint, because anyone struggling with chronic pain right now, like everything is truly connected. So you might not think that something like financial struggle could be affecting you in your health, but maybe it could be, right? I mean, there's all sorts of things that connect when we're not balanced in various areas of our life. So I love that
You're
you go
spot on.
Yeah. So 4 weeks, and is that like video calls, or how are people interacting with you during that 4 weeks?
Yes. So it's actually Zoom video.
Okay.
And people are always concerned that they're on video. It's not, they're on video. It's a Zoom class. So I'm on video, and then people can ask questions, raise their hand, put a question in the chat. And so what I do is help them identify specific things that are going on regarding each topic.
Excellent. Awesome. And again, everyone, there's 3 buttons below actually. So one leads over to this live program that Brandy's talking about that you can join her in for 2020. And the other one leads over to the video set you mentioned. And then the other one is the freebie on how to get unstuck. So awesome. Thank you. I appreciate all of that.
Absolutely. I love it. And I love what you guys are doing, Andy.
Well, thank you. So do we. We love it as well. And thank you for doing this. Are there any last insights? Anything else you want to leave people with before we wrap up?
That this journey is really absolutely amazing, like life changing. And I would say that embracing change, just making it say, okay, so like a lot of people will fear change or different things like that. And being willing to look at the mind. I mean, I was, and it's the last thing that I would have ever thought it would be, the mind. And it turned out to be the most rewarding and life changing. And so just that, and happy 2020.
Awesome. Thank you, Brandy. We appreciate you and in your journey, and for being here with us. And everyone, thank you so much for showing up for yourself and for tuning in. And we will see you again soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Andy. And thank you, everyone.
Bye. Take care.